Hello, incredible viewers. Get ready for a story that will leave you breathless. Buckle up, because today you're about to dive into a whirlwind of betrayal, empowerment, and a quest for justice that shook an empire to its foundations. Stop everything. Give this video a like right now so you don't miss a single second of this unbelievable saga, and leave your comment with your first reactions. Are you ready to discover what happens when a fairy tale life shatters into 1,000 pieces? Our story begins now. The breaking point. The dinner that changed everything. Catherine Hayes was living a dream in Westford City. Married to the charismatic Liam Maxwell, a 38-year-old tech magnate, pregnant with her first child, and residing in a breathtaking mansion overlooking the Grand River. But at a luxurious dinner in the heart of Oakwood District, with a single icy sentence, Liam turned her world upside down. He wanted a divorce, immediately. A pregnant and stunned Catherine was left alone in her palace of glass and stone. But what came next? Oh, not even Liam in his arrogance could have predicted. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's the saga of an alliance forged in the fire of contempt and a fight for justice that would make an empire tremble. The crystal goblets, filled with golden wine, at a 2-Michelin-star gastronomic temple overlooking Royal Park in Westford City, were so delicate Catherine almost feared to touch them. They seemed to vibrate with the quiet, expensive energy of the ambiance. Each dish was a work of art, miniatures of foams, jellies, and incredibly fresh ingredients. Everything perfect, almost too perfect. Catherine shifted in the soft velvet armchair, the emerald silk of her maternity dress rustling. 5 months pregnant, she was barely beginning to show a soft, happy curve, where she often rested her hand, a silent promise of the future. She smiled at her husband, Liam Maxwell. To the world, Liam was a giant. At 38, he was the founder and CEO of Vanguard Digital, a tech company that revolutionized data logistics. His face, with its defined jawline, intense blue eyes, and perpetually confident smile, graced the covers of Forbes International and Business Expansion. He moved with precision, a man for whom every second was worth $1,000. For Catherine, in the last 4 years, he had been the architect of her world. "Are the oysters and pearls to your liking, my love?" Liam asked, without lifting his eyes from his phone, quickly reviewing market data. "They're incredible," she responded softly. "Everything is. Thank you for this." Finally, he locked his phone and placed it face down on the impeccably white tablecloth, a gesture that seemed like a temporary truce. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the golden liquid. Catherine began. "We need to discuss the future." His tone shifted. The warmth, however faint, evaporated, replaced by the cold, cutting cadence he used in meetings. A wave of excitement coursed through Catherine. Would they finally talk about names for the baby? About the nursery? About the Tuscany trip he had promised for the baby's baby moon? "I'd love to," she said, leaning in slightly. "I thought if it's a boy, maybe we could honor your father, Marcus." Liam blinked, as if her words were a foreign language he couldn't be bothered to translate. "No, not that. I'm talking about our future, yours and mine, separately." The air in Catherine's lungs froze, the distant murmur of the restaurant, the gentle clinking of cutlery. Everything faded into a dull hum. "Separately? What? What are you talking about, Liam?" He sighed impatiently, as if she were a slow employee. "I've instructed my lawyer, Dr. Roberts, to draft the divorce papers. They are, to all intents and purposes, finalized. I wanted to tell you here, civilly, before they are delivered to your home tomorrow." "Divorce?" The word felt strange in her mouth, a sharp stone. No, you're joking. This is a joke, a horrible, cruel joke. Her heart pounded frantically against her ribs. She looked him in the eyes, searching for the man she loved, who had whispered promises to her under Egyptian cotton sheets, who had held her hand at their first ultrasound. But she found only a stranger, cold and calculating. I'm not joking, Catherine. I'm never more serious than when it comes to practicalities, he said, taking a sip of wine. Our marriage is no longer a viable partnership. My circumstances have changed. My needs have changed. Your circumstances? Her voice trembled, a mix of confusion and rising panic. I'm pregnant, Liam, carrying our child. How could your circumstances have changed more than that? He had the audacity to look bored. The pregnancy is a complication, I admit, but not insurmountable. The child will be extravagantly provided for. I've stipulated a very, very generous trust fund. You, in turn, will be compensated according to the prenuptial agreement. It's quite unbreakable, as you should recall. The prenuptial agreement. A document she had signed in a sea of love and trust. A 20-page monstrosity his lawyer had handed her a week before the wedding. Liam had called it a simple corporate formality. She hadn't even read it carefully. She had trusted him. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. Why? Just tell me why. Is it someone else? He considered the question as if weighing the strategic pros and cons of telling the truth. That's an oversimplification of a complex situation, he finally said. But yes, there is someone else. Her name is Isabella King. She's a business associate. She understands the world I live in, the pressures, the demands. Isabella King. The name hit Catherine like a physical blow. A stunning Brazilian heiress with dark hair and a venture capitalist who had been circling Liam's company for months. Catherine had met her at a gala event. Isabella had looked directly at her, her eyes dismissing Catherine as a beautiful but irrelevant accessory. So you're simply discarding me? The words were barely a whisper. 4 years. Our baby. It means nothing. It means it's come to an end, Liam said, placing his napkin on the table. He stood, adjusting his suit jacket. The car will take you home. I have another engagement. The papers will arrive around 10 in the morning. I advise you to have a lawyer present, although it will make little difference to the outcome. He didn't lean in to kiss her. He didn't touch her shoulder. He simply turned and walked away. A king abandoning his court, without looking back. Not a single time. Catherine remained seated alone at the table for two, surrounded by the remains of a $1,000 meal she could no longer eat. The waiter approached cautiously. Is everything all right, madam? She couldn't speak. She just nodded with a single, sharp movement. The tears she had been holding back began to fall, tracing cold paths down her cheeks, dripping onto the immaculate silk of her dress. She was no longer Catherine Hayes, wife of a millionaire. She was a complication, a partnership no longer viable. The unexpected arrival. The drive back to her sprawling estate on the outskirts of Westford City was a blur of streetlights and silent sobs. The house, usually a symbol of their shared success and happiness, now felt like a mausoleum. It was vast, cold, and painfully empty. Every photo on the wall, of them laughing in Bali, skiing in the Rocky Mountains, celebrating their anniversary, was a monument to a lie. She entered the master bedroom, a space larger than the apartment where she had grown up. Liam's side of the closet was already empty. His personal assistant had been there. Everything had been planned. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was a corporate extraction, executed with chilling precision. She spent the night curled up in a guest bedroom, unable to bear the scent of him on their sheets. She didn't sleep. She simply lay there, one hand on her belly, feeling the faint movements of life within her. It was the only thing that felt real in a world that had just been torn into a million pieces. She was alone, pregnant, and about to be divorced by a man who treated her like an obsolete asset to be liquidated. Tomorrow arrived not with sunlight, but with a gray, persistent rain that matched the despair in her soul. She sat in the cavernous living room, staring out at the manicured gardens that stretched towards the estuary. She felt nothing. She was a ghost in her own life. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang, a sound as sharp and final as the fall of a guillotine. She thought it was the messenger with the divorce papers, the final nail in the coffin of her marriage. Her body tensed, bracing for the next wave of pain. She opened the enormous oak door. It wasn't a messenger. Standing on the rain-slicked flagstone porch, flanked by 2 large Louis Vuitton suitcases, was Eleanor Maxwell, Liam's mother. Eleanor was a woman sculpted from granite and old money. Tall, impeccably dressed in a cashmere coat, with silver hair pulled back into a perfect bun, she possessed an aura of formidable authority. Her eyes, the same piercing blue as her son's, held a gaze that was not one of pity, but of something far more complex, a fierce, unwavering resolve. Catherine stared at her, confused. They had a cordial but distant relationship. Eleanor was polite, but always maintained a certain emotional distance, as if observing Catherine from behind a pane of glass. "Eleanor," Catherine stammered. "What? What are you doing here?" Eleanor Maxwell looked past Catherine, into the cold, opulent grand hall of the house her son had built. Then her gaze returned to Catherine, softening slightly as it rested on the small swell of her belly. "I heard what my son did," her voice said, clear and firm, cutting through the damp morning air. "He is a fool and a coward, so I packed my bags." She stepped forward, crossing the threshold and bringing the scent of rain and expensive perfume into the house. "If you'll have me," Eleanor Maxwell declared, "I'm moving in." For a long moment, Catherine could only stare. Eleanor Maxwell, standing in the marble hall of the house her son had just taken from Catherine, was an impossible apparition. The woman who had always treated her with polite, almost clinical distance, who sent perfectly chosen, impersonal gifts for birthdays, was now standing amidst her designer luggage, with the defiant stance of a general occupying enemy territory. Catherine's mind, clouded by pain and exhaustion, struggled to process the scene. Was this a trick? A Trojan horse sent by Liam to manage the situation and ensure she signed the papers without a fuss? The Maxwell family operated on a level of strategy that she was only just beginning to comprehend. "Move in?" Catherine finally managed to say, her voice hoarse. "Eleanor, with all due respect, I don't understand. You are his mother, and you are the mother of my grandchild," Eleanor retorted, her gaze unwavering. "That is a blood tie, my dear, a biological fact. A marriage certificate, as you have so brutally discovered, is merely a contract, and my son has just shown what he thinks of contracts." She took another step further into the house, her sharp eyes scrutinizing the cavernous, impersonal space. It was a showroom house, decorated by an expensive designer Liam had hired, filled with modern art he had bought as investments, and furniture that was more sculpture than comfort. It was a reflection of Liam himself, impressive, expensive, and utterly devoid of warmth. "May I have some tea?" Eleanor asked, already taking off her cashmere coat. "Earl Grey, if you have it, and I suggest you have some chamomile. It will be good for you and the baby." It wasn't a request. It was a soft command. Dazed, Catherine led the way to the state-of-the-art kitchen. A vast expanse of stainless steel and Italian marble, where she had never truly felt comfortable. As she filled the kettle, her hands trembled. Eleanor inspected the room with a critical eye. "This kitchen is absurd," she commented, running a finger over a sterile countertop. "It's designed for display, not for people. No soul." Catherine turned, leaning against the counter, her resolve crumbling. "Why are you really here, Eleanor? Did he send you to what? To make sure I don't make a scene?" The question hung in the air between them. Eleanor's composed expression finally softened, and for the first time, Catherine saw a glimpse of the woman behind the formidable facade. She saw a deep, weary sadness in her eyes. "Liam didn't send me," Eleanor said, her voice losing its crispness, becoming something more intimate. "Indeed, he would be furious if he knew I was here. I imagine he will be very soon. I called him this morning after hearing the news from a friend on his company's board. The situation with Isabella King is apparently common knowledge in his circle." She pronounced the name with a calm, poisonous disdain. "I told him," Eleanor continued, "that if he proceeded with this cruelty, he would not just be divorcing his wife. He would be severing his relationship with his mother. He challenged me, said I was being too sentimental. So, here I am." The kettle began to whistle, a sharp shriek in the silent house. Catherine poured the hot water into 2 cups, her mind still reeling. "But why?" Catherine whispered, handing a cup to her mother-in-law. "He's your son, your only son." Helena took the cup and walked over to a small, uncomfortable sofa in the adjacent living room. She sat perfectly straight and patted the seat beside her. Catherine hesitated a second before sinking into the cushion. "What do you think is the real reason Eleanor Maxwell has come to Catherine's aid? And how will this unlikely alliance change Catherine's fight for justice? Share your predictions in the comments." Secrets of the past. An unlikely alliance. "Catherine, I'm going to tell you something I haven't spoken about in over 20 years, Eleanor began, her gaze fixed on the gray, rain-swept view through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I'm going to tell you about Marcus Maxwell, Liam's father." The man was a legend, a ghost of the stock market who had amassed a colossal fortune in the 80s and died of a sudden heart attack on his yacht in Monaco when Liam was just a teenager. Liam rarely spoke of him, and when he did, it was with a mixture of reverence and rivalry. "Marcus, like Liam, was brilliant," Eleanor said. "He was charming, magnetic. When he gave you attention, it felt like basking in sunshine. I was young, from a good family, but with little money of my own. I was completely spellbound. We married, and he gave me a beautiful life. A house much like this one, jewels, travels, and a son." She paused, taking a slow sip of tea. "For 15 years, I believed I was the happiest woman in the world. And then, one night, he came home, sat me down in our library, and told me he had met someone else, a younger woman. He informed me that our marriage was over and that his lawyers had an agreement for me to sign. It was non-negotiable." Catherine stared at her, speechless. The parallel was striking, a chilling echo across the decades. "I was a fool," Eleanor continued, her voice tinged with the memory of old pain. "I had no resources of my own. I had signed a prenuptial agreement, just like you, without truly understanding what it meant. I was completely dependent on him. He told me I could keep the house and a comfortable allowance as long as I was discreet. If I fought him, he would cut me off completely and paint me as an unstable shrew in the press. I was trapped. I had a teenage son to think about." "What did you do?" Catherine whispered. "I signed the papers," Eleanor said, with a glint of fire in her eyes. "I accepted the settlement, and I hated myself for it every single day. I smiled at social events. I raised my son and maintained the facade of the dignified ex-wife. But inside, I was empty. Marcus died 2 years later, and his fortune, most of it, went to his new wife. Liam and I were left with a trust fund that, though substantial, was a pittance compared to his true wealth. She turned to look at Catherine directly. I watched my son grow up, idealizing a man who was a brilliant monster. I tried to teach him empathy, to instill a sense of decency in him, to warn him not to become like his father. I believed I had succeeded. Now, I see I failed. The worst parts of Marcus didn't die with him. They remained dormant in Liam, and his rampant success made them flourish. What he is doing to you is not just an echo of his father. It's a monstrous, perfect replica. The pieces clicked. This wasn't pity. This was a reckoning. Eleanor wasn't there just for Catherine. She was there for the ghost of her younger self, for the woman who had been forced to surrender. A single, fat tear rolled down Catherine's cheek. He said it was no longer a viable partnership. That is Marcus's language, Eleanor spat, her composure finally breaking into raw fury. Cold, transactional, cruel. He is erasing you, just as his father erased me. But this time, it's different. How? Catherine asked, her voice muffled by despair. The prenuptial agreement. She thought of Liam's words. He said it was unbreakable. There is no unbreakable agreement when a man hides his true worth and acts in bad faith, Eleanor declared. And more importantly, this time, there are 2 of us, and I am no longer a frightened, financially dependent girl. I have my own money, my own connections. And you, she said, her eyes resting on Catherine's belly. You have the ultimate leverage. You carry the Maxwell legacy, not Isabella King. You. Just then the doorbell rang again. A different sound this time, sharper, more insistent. Both women froze. It's the papers, Catherine whispered, a new wave of nausea sweeping over her. Eleanor rose, her back straight. I'll get it. She walked to the door and opened it. A young man in a messenger uniform stood there, holding a thick, leather-bound folder. For Catherine Hayes, he said. I'll take it, Eleanor said. Her voice left no room for discussion. She signed the receipt, took the folder, and closed the door. She returned to the living room and placed the document on the glass coffee table. It landed with a soft, final thud. It was embossed with the logo of a prestigious, ruthless law firm. Catherine looked at it as if it were a venomous snake. All the fight that had begun to stir in her withered. It's over. Her voice was flat. He won. Nonsense, Eleanor exclaimed, her energy galvanizing the room. She picked up her phone from her purse. This is not an end. This is the beginning of a negotiation. And we will not use a lawyer Liam would expect. We will not use a lawyer from his world at all. She scrolled through her contacts, her painted nail tapping decisively on the screen. When my husband left me, I was given a list of appropriate legal representatives, calm, dignified men who would handle my surrender with grace. But there was one name I heard whispered, a woman they told me to avoid at all costs. They called her the Shark, a bulldog. They said she was unfeminine in her tactics. A slow smile spread across Eleanor Maxwell's face, something genuinely predatory and beautiful. I've kept her number for 22 years, hoping I would never need it. It seems I was saving it for you. She pressed the call button. Yes, hello, her voice said, pure steel. My name is Eleanor Maxwell. I'm calling on behalf of my daughter-in-law, Catherine Hayes. We need to schedule a consultation with Ms. Francesca Moretti. Yes, I am aware of her hourly rate. That will not be a problem. We will be there this afternoon. Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever felt completely powerless in a seemingly insurmountable situation? How would you react if everything you knew crumbled overnight? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Shark Strikes. A War for Justice. Francesca Moretti's office wasn't in the expected Vanguard Tower downtown. Instead, it occupied the top floor of a renovated cast-iron building in the Old Town district, a neighborhood of art galleries and fashion boutiques. The elevator opened directly into a reception area that looked more like a modern art installation than a law firm. The walls were pristine white, adorned with large, aggressive abstract paintings in black and red. The furniture was minimalist, uncomfortably chic. There was no soothing music, just the soft hum of the city. It was a space that offered no solace. It demanded respect. A young man with an impossibly sharp haircut and an all-black suit greeted them. "Mrs. Maxwell, Ms. Hayes, Ms. Moretti will see you now." He led them down a corridor to a corner office with panoramic windows. And there, standing with the Westford city skyline as her backdrop, like a general inspecting her battlefield, was Francesca Moretti. She was not what Catherine expected. Barely in her 40s, petite and slender, dressed in an impeccable navy blue dress that was both severe and elegant. Her dark hair was cut into a sharp geometric bob that framed a face with high cheekbones and intelligent dissecting eyes. She didn't smile when they entered. She simply observed them. Her expression was a neutral mask of assessment. "Eleanor," Francesca said, her voice a low, precise contralto. "It's been too long. I regret the circumstances." She gestured to the two chairs in front of her large, uncluttered glass desk. Too long wasn't cruel, but it was intensely analytical, as if she were scanning Catherine for weaknesses. "Ms. Hayes," she began, using the formal address. "Your husband, Liam Maxwell, has served you with a proposal for dissolution of marriage. You are 5 months pregnant with his child. He, I presume, has offered you the minimum stipulated in your prenuptial agreement." Catherine, feeling small and exposed in the powerful room, could only nod. He called it generous. A dry, almost silent laugh escaped Francesca's lips. "Men like Liam Maxwell always do. They believe their crumbs are a feast for the rest of us. May I see the documents?" Eleanor slid the leather-bound folder across the vast expanse of the glass desk. For the next 20 minutes, silence descended upon the room, broken only by the whisper of pages turning. Francesca read with terrifying concentration, her eyes scanning line after line. Every now and then, she made a small note on a legal pad with a silver pen, her handwriting as sharp and precise as her appearance. Catherine felt her anxiety mount with each passing second. She watched Francesca's face for any sign of hope, but the lawyer's expression remained unreadable. Finally, Francesca reached the last page, closed the folder, and clasped her hands over it. She looked directly at Catherine. "This," she said, tapping the folder, "is a work of art, a masterpiece of legal warfare designed to leave you absolutely with nothing." The bluntness of the statement hit Catherine like a physical blow. "Dr. Roberts, his lawyer, is very good at his job," Francesca continued, her tone clinical. "The agreement you signed is a fortress. Every clause is designed to strip you of any right to marital assets. It defines marital property so strictly that the only thing you're likely entitled to is a fraction of the value of the furniture. You waive your right to alimony beyond a token amount for a limited time. It attributes his vast increase in net worth during the marriage solely to pre-existing business interests, effectively protecting his entire empire from you. On paper, it is, as your husband probably told you, unbreakable." Eleanor leaned forward, but Francesca's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. "But fortresses have cracks, and masterpieces can have flaws. This document, for all its technical brilliance, has 2 fundamental weaknesses." She held up a finger. Fraudulent inducement. Eleanor, when you signed your agreement with Marcus, was it presented to you as a non-negotiable condition of marriage with little time for independent review? Yes, Eleanor said instantly. It was positioned as a mere formality a week before the wedding. I was told questioning it was questioning his love. Francesca looked at Catherine. And you? Catherine thought of the blur of her engagement. Same. Exactly the same. Liam said it was something his board required. His lawyer, Dr. Roberts, was there. He was very charming. Explained it was just to protect the company. I had a lawyer, but he was a friend of my father's, who handled real estate. He was completely out of his depth. He advised me to sign it, my oh my. Of course, Francesca said with a sigh. We will argue that you were coerced, that you were not given sufficient time or independent, competent counsel, and that the terms were so disproportionate as to be unenforceable. It's a difficult argument to win, but it creates a problem. It muddies the water. She held up a second finger. Financial disclosure, full and honest. A prenuptial agreement is only valid if both parties accurately disclose their assets at the time of signing. More importantly, in a divorce proceeding, both parties must disclose their current assets. Men like Liam Maxwell and his father before him do not like disclosure. They build their empires in the shadows. They use shell companies, offshore accounts, and intricate networks of trusts to conceal their true worth. They present one picture to finance, another to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and a third, much smaller one, to their divorcing wives. Her voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial and thrilling. Our job is not to attack the prenuptial agreement head-on. Our job is to demand a forensic accounting of every single dollar Liam Maxwell owns. We will subpoena his company, his partners, his investment managers. We will make the discovery process so invasive, so costly, and so potentially revealing of things he doesn't want revealed, that his unbreakable agreement will suddenly become a very heavy anchor. Catherine felt a glimmer of hope, the first she had felt in what seemed like an eternity. You think he's hiding money? Francesca laughed again, a metallic, sharp sound. My dear, a man who is worth $1 billion on paper is almost certainly worth $2 or $3 billion in reality. The question isn't if he's hiding. The question is where. She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking softly. Which brings us to the baby. Her gaze softened for the first time as she looked at Catherine's belly. This is no longer just a divorce. This is a matter of child support, maintenance, and inheritance. Westford City has guidelines for child support, but those guidelines become suggestions when it comes to high net worth individuals. We will argue that this child is entitled to a lifestyle commensurate with its father's true wealth. Not a trust fund controlled by Liam, but direct, substantial, court-ordered support. We will demand private schooling, security, nannies, dedicated housing, travel. We will create a budget for this child that will make him weep. But more than that, she continued, her eyes fixed on Eleanor's. This child is the heir of his lineage. This makes his affair look not only callous, but stupid. He is discarding the mother of his legacy for a temporary diversion. We won't say that in court, of course, but we will ensure it is understood in the court of public opinion and in the boardrooms of his company. The scope of it all, the sheer aggression, was terrifying and exhilarating. This wasn't a legal dispute. It was a war fought with subpoenas and forensic accountants instead of soldiers. Now, Francesca said, her tone returning to business, this will be a brutal, fight, and very public fight. Liam will not play fair. He will hire private investigators. They will delve into your past, your family, your friends. They will try to paint you as a gold digger, an unstable, hysterical, inept mother. They will leak stories to the press. Are you prepared for that? She asked, her eyes piercing Catherine. Catherine looked at her hands, then at Eleanor, whose face was a mask of grim determination. Then she thought of Liam's cold, disdainful face in the restaurant. She thought of him, calling her baby a complication. A fire she didn't know she possessed began to burn in her chest. What do you need me to do? Catherine asked, her voice quiet but firm. A slow smile of satisfaction finally graced Francesca Moretti's lips. It transformed her face, bringing forth the shark that old guard lawyers whispered about. Well, she said, first, you and Eleanor will move back into that house and not leave. It is your marital home. Do not let him bully you out. From this moment on, all communication will go through me. Do not speak to him. Do not answer his calls. If he shows up, do not let him in. Call me. She slid a notebook and the silver pen across the desk towards Catherine. Second, you will start a journal. Document everything. Every interaction you've had regarding finances. Every promise he's made to you. Every conversation about the baby. Dates, times, locations, details. His casual mention of buying a private island. The small loan he made to a friend. The antique watch he bought that was worth more than a car. These are the threads we will pull. Third, she said, looking at Eleanor. You know the world he comes from. The people. The places. We need to find his weaknesses. A board member who values family. An old rival who would love to see him stumble. We need leverage outside of court. Francesca stood, signaling the end of the meeting. My fees are 100,000 euros. Eleanor has assured me that is not a problem. We will begin the discovery process immediately. This will be a long road, Catherine. But I promise you that when we are done, Liam Maxwell will learn that a viable partnership is a two-way street, and that his complication is about to become the most expensive problem he has ever had. Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight for something that seemed impossible to achieve? What strategy did you use? Share your experience in the comments. The war begins, a fortress of resilience. Stepping out of the office and back onto the streets of Old Town, Catherine felt different. The fog of pain hadn't dissipated, but it had been pierced by a single, sharp ray of light. She was no longer a victim adrift in the wreckage of her life. She was a client, a combatant. Alongside her formidable mother-in-law, she had just hired a shark. And they were going home. Returning to the Westford estate was a profoundly different experience. The house was no longer a cold, lonely mausoleum of a failed marriage. With Eleanor Maxwell moving through its halls, it had become a fortress, a command center. The air, once thick with Catherine's despair, now crackled with purpose. A siege was approaching, and they were preparing the ramparts. That very afternoon, a locksmith summoned by Eleanor completely changed all the locks on the property. The household staff, a chef, a housekeeper, and a gardener, all hired and paid by Liam, were politely but firmly given 2 weeks paid leave. We need privacy, Eleanor had told them. Her tone brooked no argument. Then she arranged for grocery deliveries and, to Catherine's astonishment, began methodically and expertly cleaning the soulless kitchen herself, with a vigor that belied her age and position. When you're at war, you control your supply lines and eliminate potential spies. Liam pays their salaries. Their loyalty is to him. For Catherine, this new reality was disorienting, yet comforting. The overwhelming pain still washed over her in waves, but now it was tempered by a new, unfamiliar sensation: control. Following Francesca's instructions, she picked up the expensive, leather-bound notebook originally intended for a wedding guest list, and repurposed it as her war diary. She sat in the sunlit morning room, with rain still streaking down the windows, and began to write. At first, her mind was blank, a canvas of pain. But then it started, little by little, recalling a conversation from last Christmas at Liam's ski cabin in the Rocky Mountains. December 26th. Liam was on a video conference call in front of the fireplace. She brought him a brandy. He was laughing with someone on the phone. After he hung up, he was euphoric. He said, "The Dubai deal is done. I had to pay an absolute fortune to our consultant, but it's worth it." She asked him who the consultant was. He simply winked and said, "A very useful mailbox in the Cayman Islands." He found it hilarious. He called it Vanguard Digital Atlantic. The memory, innocuous at the time, now seemed sinister. She wrote it down. Her handwriting trembled, but it was clear. April, 2 years ago. The Met Gala. Liam was trying to secure a zoning variance for a new data center. Senator Douglas was the keynote speaker. Liam won the bid for a terrible painting for €250,000. When they got in the car, she told him it was a lot of money for an ugly painting. He laughed and said, "I didn't buy a painting. We bought the senator." They were simply pulling the loose threads of his life's tapestry together. The casual comment about the 3 different sets of books his accountants kept. One for her, one for his partners, and one for finance. The time he had boasted that his true net worth was an imaginary number, because much of it was tied to untraceable art and offshore shell companies designed to be invisible. While Catherine delved into the past, Eleanor worked in the present. She sat in the formal living room, her posture perfect, her phone glued to her ear. Her conversations were masterpieces of subtlety. "Margaret, dear, what a joy to hear your voice," she cooed to the wife of David Lawrence, the most influential board member of Vanguard Digital. "Yes, I'm staying with Catherine. That difficult trait is so reminiscent of his father. Do you remember that terrible affair with the younger woman? He became so erratic, so unpredictable. His judgment was affected. It's disheartening to see the pattern repeating itself. One worries about the stability of things, the company. This Isabella King, I hear she encourages his worst impulses." She would pause, then add, "But a man with a pregnant wife at home, making such hasty decisions, it truly makes one wonder. Give my best to David." She wasn't attacking. She was expressing concern. She was planting a seed of doubt, not in Liam's morality, but in something far more important to a man like David Lawrence, his stability, and by extension the security of his investment. The first counterattack came when Catherine's phone rang, and his face, a smiling selfie from his Bali trip, appeared on the screen. Her heart leaped. Her first instinct, born of 4 years of conditioning, was to answer. Eleanor, who seemed to possess a sixth sense, entered the room. "Don't." A text message immediately followed. "Catherine, answer your phone. We need to talk. Don't be childish." Another arrived a minute later. "Are you letting my mother screen my calls? This is absurd. I will not let my personal life be dictated by an overly expensive lawyer. I'm coming to you." The message sent a shiver of pure terror through her. "He's coming," she whispered. Eleanor read the text, and her lips tightened into a hard line. "Good," she said. "Let him come." An hour later, the sleek black silhouette of Liam's McLaren supercar screeched up the gravel driveway. He emerged, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the owner of the universe, returning to his castle. He strode to the front door and tried his key. It didn't fit. The sound of metal grinding against the new lock was loud in the silent house. He recoiled with a look of pure disbelief on his face and pressed the doorbell. A long, furious buzz. Catherine and Eleanor were in the hall, watching the security camera's video feed on a tablet. Liam's face, handsome and familiar, was contorted in a mask of rage. Eleanor calmly pressed the intercom button. "Liam!" Her voice resonated on the porch, cold and clear. "You are no longer welcome here. This is Catherine's marital home." On the screen, Liam looked as though he had been slapped. "Mother, what the hell are you doing? Let me in!" "No." Eleanor's voice did not waver. "If you have anything to say to Catherine, you may do so through her lawyer. Now, please, leave the property before you are recorded as a trespasser." "My lawyer will roar," Liam scoffed, laughing with an ugly bitterness. "Do you think Francesca Moretti will scare me? I will bury you. I will bury both of you in legal fees. I will prove Catherine is an inept mother." "You will do no such thing," Eleanor interrupted, her voice dropping to a dangerously low temperature. "Your father tried the same pathetic harassment, Liam. He tried to bully me, to threaten me. It was beneath him then, and it is beneath you now. You are behaving like a cornered animal, not like the industry titan you pretend to be. Go away." Catherine watched him. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. "Go away, Liam. Talk to my lawyer." On the screen, his face showed pure shock. It was one thing to be defied by his mother, whom he considered a sentimental relic. It was another to be defied by Catherine, the woman he had deemed docile and disposable. Liam turned and stormed away, spitting gravel from his tires. Catherine let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her legs felt weak. Eleanor placed a firm, reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The first charge was repelled," she said softly. "Very well done. What do you think will be Liam's next move after being so publicly humiliated and shut out? Share your predictions in the comments. Checkmate. The fight for an empire. The true counteroffensive arrived the next day, not at his doorstep, but at his lawyer's, the calm and unperturbed Dr. Roberts. "He refuses to speak to me?" Liam bellowed, pacing in front of the windows. "They changed the locks. My mother is there with her, conspiring against me." Dr. Roberts, a man who specialized in quiet, orderly dissolutions, looked uncomfortable. "Liam, I warned you this approach was aggressive. It was likely to provoke a reaction." "Wait." Just then, Roberts's assistant entered carrying a box so full of papers, it looked like a ream of printer paper. "This just arrived by messenger for you, De Roberts, from the offices of Francesca Moretti." Roberts opened the box. His calm, professional demeanor began to dissolve as he pulled out the first document. It was a 200-page financial discovery request, single-spaced. It demanded, among other things, every bank statement from every account, national and international, every stock transaction, every email related to the formation of any shell company or trust, complete documentation regarding the purchase of all art and property, including consulting fees for the Dubai deal and the donation to Senator Douglas's charity organization. It was a legal campaign of shock and awe. Attached, a bill for $100,000. He looked up at his client. The bravado had vanished from Liam's face. "This isn't a negotiation tactic," Liam said in a grim voice. "She's not trying to get a better settlement." He held up the enormous document. "She's trying to get my entire company." Liam reacted to Francesca's aggressive financial inquiries with full-scale warfare. His legal team quickly filed motions, and simultaneously, Liam used the media against Catherine. A sensationalist news article painted her as a ruthless gold digger exploiting her pregnancy for money. Photographers and surveillance vans remained outside her home, adding to her stress and anxiety. Eleanor, ever serene, protected Catherine fiercely. "He wants you to break," she advised her, hardening Catherine's resolve. During the first few sleepless nights, Catherine's meticulous journal revealed a crucial memory. Their third anniversary trip to St. Bartholomew. Liam had shown her a corporate structure labeled Project Chimera, boasting that it was an undetectable foundation in Liechtenstein that owned Vanguard Digital's most valuable patents. Catherine clearly recalled his chilling comment. "It's legal if you can pay the lawyers to make it legal." She made a secure call with Francesca Moretti. "Project Chimera," Francesca repeated curtly, emotion evident in her voice. "Liechtenstein means secrecy, tax evasion, asset concealment, corporate fraud. This can escalate beyond a divorce court into criminal charges." Catherine hesitated, concerned about the idea of Liam facing prison. "He built this trap himself," Eleanor reminded her softly. "Not you. This is leverage. If Liam refuses to disclose, he risks contempt of court. Compliance reveals fraud. Moreover, this revelation will terrify his board, turning his personal scandal into a corporate catastrophe armed with this powerful information." Francesca swiftly modified her legal documents to specifically target Project Chimera. Liam's facade was finally crumbling. Within 24 hours, Francesca filed a precise and devastating motion with the court. It detailed the existence of Project Chimera, a Liechtenstein foundation that concealed Vanguard Digital's core intellectual property. The implication was clear. Liam had committed corporate fraud. Liam Maxwell stared at the document, stunned. "How could they know?" he asked desperately, looking at his lawyer, who was visibly shaken. "I don't know, but they know. This is not a bluff. If a judge grants this motion, and it's very likely they will, we must produce evidence that reveals your fraud or face contempt of court." "Stop them," Liam ordered. "Appeal, delay, do something." Roberts shook his head firmly. "It's too late. Francesca Moretti has perfectly cornered him. This isn't divorce law. Now it's criminal territory." Meanwhile, across town, Eleanor Maxwell was executing the final blow on Liam. At a discreet lunch with David Lawrence, chairman of Vanguard Digital's board, she expressed grave concern about Liam's reckless actions, subtly mentioning Liechtenstein. That same afternoon, David convened an emergency board meeting, confronting Liam with Francesca's motion. "Did you really think you could hide assets, Project Chimera?" Isabella King, his mistress, coldly dismissed him, labeling him a toxic asset. Shattered and alone, Liam clearly saw that only one option remained: total surrender. The next morning, his assistant called the Westford estate. "Mr. Maxwell requests a meeting with Ms. Hayes," she said timidly. "At her convenience. We await him here tomorrow at noon." Catherine sat quietly in the sunny morning room as Liam entered, defeated and humiliated. "I'm sorry," he began weakly. But Catherine cut him off sharply. "You're sorry because you got caught." Francesca's terms were definitive. He read the brutal conditions. Catherine receives the Westford estate in full, free of debt, and $200 million. Catherine has full custody. Liam is allowed supervised visits only after intensive therapy. Liam publicly retracts defamatory stories about Catherine. Project Chimera details are permanently sealed conditional on his compliance. "My son," Liam pleaded desperately. "You called our child a complication," Catherine replied coldly. "This agreement ensures you won't hurt us again. Sign it, or you lose everything." Defeated and knowing his fate, Liam nodded in silence. "I will have my lawyers sign it later today." As he left, Catherine realized the battle was over. She had reclaimed control of her life, emerging stronger and surrounded by a true family. What do you believe is the most significant consequence of Liam's actions, beyond the financial loss? Share your thoughts below. Eleanor's legacy, the power of true worth. The Liam Maxwell who approached the house bore little resemblance to the confident millionaire who had abandoned Catherine months earlier, his sharp features softened by defeat, as if the man within had shrunk. Catherine watched him enter the morning room, the sunlight framing her serene expression as she placed a protective hand over her rounded belly. Eleanor remained silent by the fireplace, her presence resolute. "Catherine," Liam began, his voice strained. "Thank you for seeing me." She gave a slight nod, her composure unshakable. The shift in power was clear. She held the control. "I'm sorry," he stammered, his gaze faltering under her steady eyes. "For how I spoke to you, for what I said, everything. I wasn't thinking clearly." She gently raised a hand, stopping him. "You're sorry because you got caught, Liam, not because you hurt me." He visibly flinched, the raw truth piercing his practiced facade. She let the silence linger before calmly sliding a single sheet of paper to him. "Francesca drafted these terms. They are non-negotiable." Liam's hands trembled as he read. The house. Catherine would keep the Westford estate, free of debt. The settlement. $200 million placed in a trust controlled solely by Catherine and Francesca Moretti for their child's future. Custody. Catherine would have sole custody. Liam would receive supervised visitation rights only after completing a year of professional therapy. Public retraction. Liam would publicly retract all defamatory statements against Catherine. Silence. In exchange for his agreement, the details of Project Chimera would remain confidential. Liam looked up, color draining from his face. "Catherine, please. My son. You can't. You called our baby a complication. You were willing to discard us," Catherine responded firmly. "I learned that for you, family was disposable. This agreement protects my family from you. You will provide for your child materially, but your influence ends there. Sign it, or you risk losing everything." He looked at Eleanor, seeking compassion, but he found none, only a silent judgment. Realizing he had no leverage, Liam nodded in defeat. "My lawyers will sign it later today," he said in a low voice, standing and leaving without another word. 6 months later, the morning room had transformed from a battlefield into a warm, welcoming nursery, filled with soft colors and gentle laughter. Catherine gently rocked, cradling her daughter, named Eleanor Catherine Maxwell, or Lena. The elder Eleanor entered the room, her severe countenance softened into a joyful, warm grandmother. "How's our angel?" she whispered, brushing a kiss on the baby's forehead. "Wonderful," Catherine responded softly, smiling at the woman who had become her strongest ally and closest family. News about Liam occasionally reached them. He had avoided prison, but his empire had crumbled. Isabella King moved on, leaving him completely alone. Catherine felt neither anger nor sadness, just a calm indifference. Liam was a closed chapter. Looking around the sunny nursery, Catherine knew she had gained something infinitely richer than Liam's fortune: strength, resilience, and the bond of a family forged in the fiercest fire. Through Catherine's journey, there's something every woman should remember. Your worth is not determined by anyone else. Do not allow cruel words, humiliation, or criticism to extinguish your inner flame, because within you resides a strength that can lift you up, even in the darkest moments. Being a mother, a homemaker, or following any path you choose does not make you less. You are capable, valuable, and worthy of respect. No one has the right to make you feel small, not because of your appearance, your choices, or your sacrifices. Love and self-worth begin with you. Toxic relationships and emotional abuse, whether public or private, should never be normalized or tolerated. If someone tries to tear you down or make you feel unworthy, remember this: You don't need anyone to validate your power. You deserve respect, dignity, and love. And if someone tries to crush your spirit, you must know this: you can rise again, because the strength within you can't be destroyed. You are not alone. Seek support. Know your rights. Surround yourself with people who uplift and cherish you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Like Catherine, you have the power to reclaim your life, rebuild your confidence, and rediscover the extraordinary woman you always were. You are powerful. You are valuable. You are enough. That's how the story ends. Or perhaps it begins again, don't you think? And if you're still here, if you're still watching or reading up to this very moment, then maybe, just maybe, something in Catherine's journey has touched your heart in a quiet but powerful way. If so, take a moment with me now. Let's look at this not just as a story, but as something we can take into our own lives. Catherine's transformation wasn't just about red dresses or dramatic entrances. It was about rediscovering her self-worth. It was about walking through fire and realizing she could survive without waiting for permission. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Catherine reclaimed her freedom not by fighting Liam with anger, but by reclaiming her power with grace. How many times do we remain silent just to keep the peace? How many times do we convince ourselves that we are too broken, too late, too tired to start anew? Catherine's story reminds us that healing begins the moment we say, "Enough." Remember, healing isn't noisy. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's a quiet decision at your kitchen table, a whisper that says, "I am enough." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. There are more stories like this waiting for you, more reminders that, even when life tries to extinguish your light, you remain the flame. Thank you for being here. You are important, and your story is not yet over. See you in the next video.